Hello, my name is Lauren, and welcome to the Theoretical YouTube channel, where today we're going without glasses because I kinda maybe sort of broke them in half. And also welcome to the second episode of Book vs. Movie, where today we're going to take a closer look at How to Train Your Dragon. There's not much more to this introduction, so cue montage. Okay, so who here has actually read the How to Train Your Dragon books? And by that, I mean the whole series. Not just the first couple, but all 12 books. And if you haven't, you really missed out. Because towards the end, things transition from funny standalone adventures into a complex world with deep lore, plot twists, and tragic character arcs. But if you only made it to book 3, I don't blame you. The last book came out in 2015, over a decade after the first publication. And 5 years after the movie. Let's face it, the movies had far better circulation than any of the books. I know a lot of people who didn't even know the movies were based on books. Also, based is kind of a strong word here, since the biggest similarity the two franchises share is the name. Even if you read all the books, it's not like they tell the same story. Don't get me wrong, there are still ideas that carry over, they're just buried under a lot of changes. But which version of the story is actually better? Let's start with a brief overview of the book series for anyone who needs a quick refresher. Also, there are many spoilers in this video, you have been warned. The books, written by Cresta Cowell, follow a young Viking named Hiccup Horrendous Haddock III, who is the most unlikely hero who has ever lived. He is the son of a chief, but scrawny, nerdy, and generally disliked. I swear, it's different from the movies. His best friend is a boy named Fishlegs, who is equally weak and pathetic, if not more so. Together they go on a variety of adventures, proving themselves in a world set against them. Oh, also there are dragons. But dragons in the book are common to Vikings, like pets. You got your hunting dragon and your riding dragon. The better the breed, the better the social class for the owner. And unluckily for Hiccup, he ends up with the most basic and unwanted dragon in existence, Toothless. And that's the basic setup for the first couple of books. After that, it gets more complicated. Because every book flings Hiccup into a new situation where he learns something about his past or the world. He builds a relationship with his arch nemesis, Alvin the Treacherous, travels to America, develops a skill for sword fighting. He fights the Roman Empire, he gets sold into slavery, and even fulfills an ancient prophecy to become the last king of the Wilder West. See, I told you it gets complicated. The last couple of books are actually about that prophecy, because either Hiccup or Alvin could be king. It all depends on who has the King's Lost Things, which are a variety of items that were sprinkled throughout the series. In fact, almost every book has Hiccup discovering and collecting them without knowing what they are. Most of them just look like junk. But Alvin steals them, and Armageddon's coming. Just read the books yourself, I swear they're great. Anyway, here's how the movies go. The story follows a young Viking named Hiccup, who is the most unlikely hero who has ever lived. He is the son of a chief, but scrawny, nerdy, and generally disliked.
Okay, but I hit a night fury.
Until one day, he shoots down the most deadly dragon known to man, the Night Fury, Toothless. Because in this society, dragons are horrifying beasts who kill people, terrorize villages, and burn them to the ground. Hiccup learns to bond with Toothless and discovers that dragons aren't the monsters that everyone thinks they are. His father finds out, they fight a really big evil dragon, and then they begin to incorporate dragons into their society by domesticating them. The second movie actually takes place after a few TV shows, and I'm gonna admit here that I haven't actually seen them all. I watched a couple episodes of Riders of Berk, skipped Defenders of Berk, and only made it through the first season of Race to the Edge on Netflix. But here's the basic gist. Dragons continue to be incorporated on the Isle of Berk, Hiccup and Astrid fall in love, and there are evil Vikings. That's pretty much it. The second movie continues these themes. Hiccup finds his mother, who runs a dragon sanctuary, and there's an evil Viking who controls dragons with a really big evil one. Hiccup's father dies, there's a climactic fight, Toothless does something really cool that I don't totally understand. Okay, credits are rolling. And I'm writing this before the third movie comes out, so who knows what happens next. Alright, is everybody caught up? No questions? Good, because this is pre-recorded and I can't answer any of them. So what categories are we going to use to judge which one is better? Well, I'm just going to make them up as I go along because this is my series and I get to run it however I want. And I want to start with what I personally believe is the most important part of any story: the characters. Maybe I'm the only one who feels this way, but I believe that you could create the greatest story ever written in the most complex world of all time, and it would suck without interesting characters to populate it. That's just my opinion. But if we're looking at How to Train Your Dragon characters, there are pretty much 3 categories we have to look at: Hiccup, Toothless, and everybody else. Let's start with the main character, Hiccup. Well, book Hiccup and movie Hiccup actually aren't that different. They're both an unlikely hero who feels like an outcast and has to prove themselves to be brave, a good leader, and all that jazz.
We're Vikings. It's an occupational hazard.
Basically, most of his character is that in a society run by brawn, brain matters too. And the voice actor, Jay Baruchel, does an amazing job at portraying an awkward kid who struggles with being different. But what's actually different between the 2 portrayals? Well, movie Hiccup has a bit stronger of a motivation. Let me explain. Book Hiccup is just kind of along for the ride. He doesn't fit in, but he doesn't try to either. His best friends are Fishlegs, someone less popular than him, and Kamikaze, a girl from a different tribe. His main interests are teaching himself Dragonese and just trying to survive his everyday life. Whatever adventure he gets thrust into is rarely his choice. He gets lost or kidnapped or his best friend is dying. He just wants to go back to normal. But movie Hiccup is a bit different because he actually wants to fit in because he isn't comfortable being the outcast. He wants to kill a dragon and hang out with the other kids in his village.
I am a Viking!
It's only after meeting Toothless that he realizes he can do things a different way, that his own personality does have a place in society. Then again, he's also gained the trust of his peers. He has started to form his own path of non-conformity. The next movie shows him accepting leadership and transcending from the recluse kid into an honorable chief. But which is the better character? Well, I'm gonna go with movie Hiccup here because his story arc is just a little bit more relatable. It's really hard being someone who's comfortable being picked on and teased. Just trying to get back to normal when life sucks anyway is weird. But movie Hiccup isn't content where he is. He wants more. He wants to grow up and be respected, and from someone who gets kicked around and ostracized, that's a resilient choice. Both portrayals are really good snapshots of what it's like to be a kid, but I think the movie takes this point because it just gives Hiccup a clearer motivation. But if you disagree with that, I'm sure we can agree that movie Toothless is better than his book counterpart. Maybe it's just me, but book Toothless is the worst. Even when he gets written with some redeeming qualities, they almost seem out of character. For those of you who don't know, Toothless is not a big and powerful force of nature. He's about this big and basically Jar Jar Binks. Don't believe me? Here's some of his dialogue. The thing about us dragons is that we're survivors. We know like scabby dogs or dumb dogs falling in love with their masters and yucky things like that. Or how about when he repeatedly complains about food when everyone else is starving, goes on strikes in life-threatening situations, and poops all over Hiccup's house. He almost never shows any affection for his master, and when he does, I don't know, it just feels like his character got hijacked or something. I just have a hard time believing he actually cares about Hiccup after 12 books. On the other hand, movie Toothless is one of the most feared dragons of all time. He's fierce and agile and dangerous to behold. The Night Fury is terrifying and deadly. His reputation precedes him. And yet he's goofy and loyal and forgiving. His bond with Hiccup is the strongest and most pivotal in the entire series. One of my favorite scenes in the franchise is right after Hiccup shoots Toothless out of the sky and decides not to kill him. But what many people forget is that Toothless made the exact same choice. Hiccup cuts him loose and Toothless almost takes his life. But in that moment, he spares his future friend and leaves, even though he's disabled and can't escape. And the best part is that he displays this wide range of emotions and personality without uttering a single word. The character design and animation is phenomenal at portraying what could be a real-life creature, who can be scared and furious or optimistic and skeptical. Toothless becomes a dynamic character with an important role in the story. He and Hiccup are partners and friends. You can't say the same thing about Book Toothless. Book Toothless never becomes anything but a self-centered child who cries and bites and makes Hiccup's life a disaster. Hiccup really cares about his dragon, but that emotion is never reciprocated and rarely makes the same impact on the audience. So the point goes to the movie. End of story. Which just leaves everyone else. Which story has the best supporting cast? Well, many of the characters appear in both versions, so let's start there. And who has more drastic character changes than Fishlegs? First of all, Fishlegs is described as almost dangerously skinny. He has asthma, eczema, a squint, a limp, he can't swim, and wears glasses. Oh yeah, he's also allergic to reptiles, including his vegetarian dragon Horror Cow, who naps for like 70% of the series. He's sarcastic, self-deprecating, hapless, and Hiccup's loyal best friend. And in a strange turn of events, he's also a berserker, which means he goes crazy in battles, throwing caution to the wind and raining fury on his enemies. Movie Fishlegs is none of those things. Movie Fishlegs is a big kid who has practically memorized the Book of Dragons. He's sensitive, easily frightened, and kinda just along for the ride.
I'm okay! That's okay!
I've also never understood why he was one of the popular kids. I mean, he's just as nerdy as Hiccup and frankly less Viking-like. I don't know. Who's next? Well, before I move on to the rest of the friend group, I want to talk about Hiccup's father, Stoic the Vast. In the books, Stoic is the chief of the Hairy Hooligan tribe, and not the brightest. His main character traits are loving his son and wishing he were a bit bigger. He's the stereotypical model for a Viking in the books. Big, dumb, violent, and wild. A good leader and a caring father. Movie Stoic has a lot of the same traits. He's the chief on Berk and what a Viking is supposed to look like. But the movies and the books have different ideas on what that means. The books are goofier. The name Stoic is actually kind of a joke because he's not. No one is. But Movie Stoic lives up to his name.
Stop being so stoic.
He's serious and doesn't believe in weakness. He wants Hiccup to be a hardened warrior. The tone of this particular character really reflects the overall series. The books are goofier, and the movies are, well, stoic. Okay, now the rest of the kids. Let's look at Snotlout. Movie Snotlout is pompous. He flirts with girls, unsuccessfully, and makes a fool of himself all the time. He's not as brave, strong, or manly as he thinks. He's also pretty mean, but not so much so that he and Hiccup can't be friends at the end of the first movie. Book Snotlout, on the other hand, is supposed to be the exact opposite of Hiccup. He's tall, strong, well-liked, and excels in all of their classes. He's also Hiccup's cousin, which means that he's second in line for the chiefdom, which everyone thinks he deserves. Which also means he's constantly trying to kill his cousin. He helps his friend try to kill Hiccup in a sword fight, he damages his boat, leaving him stranded in the ocean, and uses a whip on him at some point. He also has the best redemption arc in the second to last book. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who legitimately loves this part, but I don't even want to spoil it for you. It's shocking and amazing and really contextualizes the character. Just read the books, it's worth it. On to the twins. Well, actually, Rough Nut isn't a character in the book, but there is a character named Tough Nut Jr. who is about Hiccup's age and one of Snotlout's lackeys. He's not very important to the series, he's kind of just there to make the class bigger. Movie Tough Nut is not my favorite character. Occasionally he gets a funny line or two, but he's basically TJ Miller as a Viking. And his sister is TJ Miller as a Viking if he was a girl. Whatever, they're both just there to make the friend group a little bit bigger. And that leaves Astrid. Astrid isn't a character in the books. In fact, Hiccup doesn't have a love interest in the book, and frankly, that's what Astrid is, a love interest. What the books do have is the objectively best character, Kamikaze. Kamikaze is a little girl who becomes one of Hiccup's best friends. She's the heir to the Bog Burglar tribe, which means that she can steal anything from anyone. She's an escape artist, pickpocket, and talented fighter. Here's a quote from book 3. But this little girl was just as good at sword fighting as Hiccup. Her arm moved so quickly you could hardly see it. She turned cartwheels between moves, and she talked constantly throughout, which made it difficult to concentrate. I mean, come on, how could you not love her? Okay, let's give Astrid a fair shot. In addition to being Hiccup's love interest, she also takes on several of Snotlout's original roles. For one thing, she's the leader of the friend group, top of her class and Hiccup's rival for most of the first movie. She's popular, well-loved, and jealous of Hiccup's newfound importance.
Wow, he's better than you ever were.
She's a skilled fighter who values hard work and intelligence, and she can certainly wield a battle axe like nobody's business. But really, would the series be that different without them? Once again, she and the rest of the friend group are just kind of there.
I'm sorry!
And after the first movie, she kind of just takes a back seat and has very little character growth.
Where have you been?
Gobber is better in the movies though. He gets some really funny lines as opposed to his pretty much one-note character in the books. And that note is yelling. But the real difference between characters in the books and movies are the villains. Because the books have some great villains. Like, they're very Batman comic book-esque, creative and zany. Like, there's even one that's kind of a Viking version of Two-Face. But instead of flipping a coin, he decides whether or not he's going to kill people by tossing a giant battle axe in the air. Ah, Norbert the Nutjob. Classic. And then there's Mad Guts the Murderess, who doesn't even speak. All his opinions and dialogue is delivered through his assistant. The hairy, scary librarian is the guardian of a library full of banned books, because Vikings aren't supposed to read, and he uses heart slicers in order to kill trespassers. And of course, Alvin the Treacherous, Hiccup's arch nemesis. Also known as Alvin the Poor But Honest Farmer, his most mighty murderousness, Alvin the Treacherous, great high chieftain of the outcast tribe, then prefect of Rome, Alphonse the Talented but emotional French chef, or Terrific Al. What I really like about Alvin is that he's not a stereotypical Viking. He's not big and strong, but rather crafty and resilient. And this really fits the series because Hiccup isn't a stereotypical Viking either. Both the hero and the villain are seen as second-rate, and yet their struggle is what determines the fate of the world. The TV shows had a version of Alvin, but he was pretty much just another evil guy.
Then it's a good thing I brought a challenger.
The only real villain the movies gave us was Drago Bloodfist, and he's pretty generic. Dragons burnt his arm off, so he wants to enslave dragons. Frankly, he's not very interesting. And from the trailers for the third movie, this guy's name is Grimmel the Grizzly, and he just wants to hunt dragons and kill them. For sport. Yeah, for populating their world with more interesting and complex characters, the books win the point for this round. Okay, I'll stop blabbering on about characters, because what good are they when the world around them is uninteresting? So the next category is world building, also very important for the fantasy genre. And honestly, this one pretty obviously goes to the books. Let me explain. The movies don't do that much expanding from the Isle of Berk. I mean, there's the Dragon's Den, Hiccup's mother's Dragon Sanctuary, and I guess there's a hidden world. But even when they do leave the island, it's always under the guise of exploration. The characters themselves don't know that much about their own world. And when a villain comes into the story, it's kind of like they just emerge from the mist of plot twists. The second movie has this weird scene where we see all the other tribe leaders get burnt to death, but we never actually meet those other tribes. Wouldn't trade be important in this society? I mean, they're Vikings. Aren't they supposed to be going on raiding missions and conquering land and stuff?
We're Vikings. It's an occupational hazard.
Maybe the TV shows explore this idea a little bit more, but this is book versus movie, okay? Books do a very good job at creating a complex society. For instance, there are a lot of other tribes besides Hiccup's. You've got the Bog Burglars, the Meatheads, the Murderesses, the Outcasts, the Berserkers, the Peaceables, the Visithugs, the Lavalouts, and the Basham Wakes. They have intertribal competition, games, and government. They have specific feuds and enemies. In addition, Hiccup travels to several places outside the Viking archipelago, like, I don't know, maybe America. Also, he fights the Roman Empire. At some point, Hiccup is branded with a slave mark and condemned to eternal slavery, but then his mother starts a slave rebellion reclaiming the symbol as a dragon's mark, which then dives into a very complicated lore about the symbol and its connection to Hiccup's family. Because remember, Hiccup Horrendous Haddock the Third? Yeah, there have been 2 other Hiccups who revolutionized the world. Plus an evil murderous great something grandfather named Grimbeard the Ghastly. Oh yeah, there's also that whole prophecy and Armageddon thing, so the books clearly win this round. And now we're all tied up and I get to make a final choice, because this video is really long and I actually can't think of a really good category to end on. So the winner is the movies. Hold on, I'll explain. There's just so much about the movies that really enhance the story in ways the books never could. For instance, the animation is just phenomenal. The flying scenes are probably the best, but the action and humor are also very well timed. The voice acting work is perfect, and the character designs are great. What more people need to talk about is the fact that we actually see these characters age. I mean, do you know how rare that is? And it actually continues through the TV shows too. It really connects it all into one big timeline and humanizes the characters. And by far, the best part about these movies is the music. Okay, maybe not the best part, but listen. For instance, in the second movie, there's a song between Stoic and Velka that is pretty much their song. It represents their relationship and their love.
I'll swim and sail the savvy seas, but never fear of drowning. Gladly ride the waves of life if you will marry me.
And about 10 minutes later, listen to what plays when Stoic rescues Velka from Drago.
Thank you.
For you, my dear. Anything.
Actually, listen to every single part of this battle scene, because this is where all the characters come back together after being separated. When Hiccup's friends join the battle, listen to what plays.
Yeah! What?
It's the exact same music as when they did the same thing in the first movie.
Yeah! Cross top, watch your backs!
And what about when Hiccup and Toothless arrive? Sound familiar?
Attaboy!
When Roughnut starts to have a crush on Snotla and Fish Legs? Well, we also heard it here. And in the very first scene of the movie. And what about when Toothless is about to kill Hiccup?
Toothless, no! Toothless!
This music plays many times throughout the series, but do you remember the very first? Chilling, right? And also, isn't it kind of just a slowed down, modified version of this?
Okay there, bud.
And all of these examples are coming from just one scene. The music in this series is not just repetitive, it's actively helping to tell the story. It's beautiful, gorgeous, and breathtaking, and also extremely clever and purposeful. So much thought went into every little detail about these movies that frankly didn't have to be there. If they were really meant for little kids, do you think they'd bother with aging the characters or the greatest film score ever composed? John Powell is my hero, guys. The books are amazing, and not enough people have read them all the way through. They get better and better with each installment. But the movies have the same heart and compelling ideas. They just use different tools to tell a different story. And for that creativity and imagination, they might just be the better version of How to Train Your Dragon. But who knows, maybe the last movie's gonna be garbage. I'm gonna see it anyway. So, how many of you have actually read the books and didn't just click on this thumbnail for the movies? And if not, I'm sure your local library has at least 4 on the shelf right now. Just look under Crested a Cowl. Believe me, it's worth it. Also, did you know How to Train Your Dragon was directed by the same people who did Lilo and Stitch? These are legitimately 2 of my favorite animated movies of all time. Also, for anyone who's wondering, my favorite song on the soundtrack is Test Drive, but Forbidden Friendship is way up on the list. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and agreed with something I said. And if you didn't, how about you weigh on in the comment section down below? I'd love to hear you out. If you want more cool content, why don't you subscribe to our channel? I'm actually writing a How to Train Your Dragon theory right now, so check back in a couple weeks. And in the meantime, we have some other great stuff already on the channel. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.
Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile.